walking. It's something that we typically learn to do by the age of 2, and most of us don't think twice about it. Seems safe enough, but each year in the United States, approximately 70,000 pedestrians are injured, and more than 4,000 are killed in motor vehicle-related accidents. Pedestrian safety is not a new concern. In Roman times, accidents involving pedestrians became so serious that Julius Caesar, the self-proclaimed director of great roads, banned chariots and carts from city streets until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And in London, by 1720, pedestrian accidents involving coaches and carts were so frequent that they were the leading cause of fatalities in that city. American cities also became dangerous places to walk. In New York City, by 1867, horses were killing an average of 4 pedestrians a week. Since then, the number of pedestrian fatalities there has actually declined, even though the city now has 4 times the population. In large part, we owe that to New York City businessman William Phelps Eno, who recognized the need for reform and led the fight for safety improvements. Considered the father of road safety, he's credited with introducing traffic lights, driver's licenses, and pedestrian safety islands. Today, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration coordinates a countrywide program that has cut the rate of pedestrian accidents by 30% since 1998. There's something to learn from communities that have made significant gains in safety. They did so by encouraging the consistent involvement of all stakeholders, including the governing body, the municipal manager, police and crossing guards, public works, the Board of Education, parents, and citizen volunteers. These communities have shown that consistent effort over time does achieve results, but it requires leadership. Pedestrian accidents are caused by a combination of physical and human factors, and each situation has its own dangers. For example, pedestrian accidents are more frequent in urban areas, but are more likely to be fatal on rural roads. And not surprisingly, those most at risk for pedestrian accidents are children. For children under the age of 5, the accident frequency is relatively low, but those accidents that do occur are often fatal. Tragically, 2 young children are killed each week by vehicles that are backing up, with children especially vulnerable to accidents in driveways. This is known as the bye-bye syndrome, and 70% of the time involves a child who runs toward a car driven by someone who is a parent or a close relative. Starting at age 5, when children begin to explore their neighborhood, the accident rate increases significantly. A major contributing factor is the inability of young children to locate a moving object using sound. This ability is known as auditory localization, and it's not typically developed in a child until the age of 9 or 10. As a result, young children are not aware of traffic unless they're literally looking directly at a vehicle. One of the most common types of accidents in this age group is the mid-block dart-out. Because children lack auditory localization, they tend to impulsively run across the street without stopping to look. Parked cars can increase the danger by hiding a child from a passing motorist until it's too late to stop. By age 10, children become more mobile, and yes, the accident rate increases accordingly, with many injuries occurring at intersections and in parking lots. Starting at age 16, drugs and alcohol become a factor in pedestrian accidents. Teens and those in their early 20s are more likely to indulge in risky behavior because the area of the brain that cautions against these behaviors is not yet fully developed. In fact, the pedestrian accident rate does not drop significantly until the brain has fully matured, usually in the mid-20s. At age 25, the overall accident rate drops, but this is deceptive because people walk less as they get older. The fatality rate, as opposed to the overall accident rate, peaks for pedestrians who are 75 to 84 years old. Seniors are more likely to be seriously injured or killed in a pedestrian accident than young people. Intersections are especially dangerous for seniors because they can't cross the street quickly and often fail to notice vehicles in turning lanes. Seniors are at a greater risk for these accidents because peripheral vision and auditory localization skills decrease as we age. But increased vehicle speeds put all pedestrians at risk. If a car going 20 miles per hour hits a pedestrian, there is a 95% chance the pedestrian will survive. However, when a vehicle is traveling 30 miles per hour, the survival rate decreases to 45%. And at 40 miles per hour, survival drops to less than 10%. Reducing speeds in residential and business districts must be a priority in any pedestrian safety campaign. Distracted driving has become a major problem. In 80% of all accidents, the driver was looking away from the road or doing something else at least 3 seconds prior to the accident. Here's a disturbing statistic. Research has determined that at any time, 11% of all motorists are talking on cell phones. The use of a cell phone, even a hands-free phone, quadruples the risk of an accident. You see, the mind is similar to a computer and can process only so much data at one time. Even if you're not distracted by things like cell phones, radios, conversations, and food, your mind still cannot process all of the information it receives while driving. Talking on a cell phone puts the brain into information overload, making it impossible to operate a vehicle safely. For example, research shows that a motorist on a cell phone stops scanning the road and tends to only look straight ahead. This results in the loss of peripheral vision, and the driver often fails to see things coming in from the side, such as a pedestrian or another car. Texting is even more dangerous because motorists literally take their eyes off the road and their hands off the steering wheel, the ultimate recipe for disaster. It's also a problem when pedestrians use cell phones and other electronic devices. A Los Angeles study found that pedestrians talking on cell phones are less likely to look for traffic, and they take longer to get to the other side of the street. To be successful, a safety program must include 4 basic elements known as the 4 E's: evaluation, engineering, education, and enforcement. There's no simple or quick fix. Safety requires leadership and an ongoing commitment from community officials. The process of making your community pedestrian-friendly begins with an evaluation of your community's experience. Start by reviewing pedestrian accident reports and marking their locations on a map. This exercise will help you identify accident hotspots in your community. Then visit these locations to get a better understanding of how the accidents occurred. Research has identified certain reoccurring accident factors. For example, intersections with 2 or more lanes in each direction have significantly more pedestrian accidents than intersections where there is only 1 lane in each direction. Left-turning vehicles are involved in more pedestrian accidents at T intersections than standard X intersections. That's because left-turning vehicles at T intersections have no oncoming traffic to delay their turn. Two-way streets have significantly more pedestrian accidents than one-way streets, and sun glare is a factor at intersections facing in certain directions, particularly at certain times of the year. Terrain is another factor. Intersections on downhill grades are prone to speeding, while intersections on uphill grades are especially prone to sun glare. Next, on your map, mark those points where speed limits change. Motorists are less likely to obey lower residential and school zone speed limits on roads where the speed limit was higher just before reaching these slow zones. Now, locate major walking routes. It's a good idea to walk these routes and identify issues such as missing or damaged sidewalks, overhanging shrubbery, and other hazards that should be corrected. Look for places where pedestrians have worn a path by the side of the roadway. This is a telltale sign that sidewalks are needed. Now, place the location of schools on the map. Trace the walking routes to schools and also locate crossing guard stations. School zones have emerged as a significant pedestrian safety problem. 40 years ago, 50% of children walked to school. Today, 46% are driven by parents, 40% ride the school bus, and only 14% walk. You might think this would mean a lower risk of pedestrian accidents, but that's not the case. Today, school zones are clogged with far more traffic than they were designed to handle. And this is why school officials and parents must be included in the planning and implementation of the community safety program. Finally, ask for public input from senior citizens and youth organizations. Where do they congregate? And what problems do they experience when walking in the community? Armed with all this information, study possible engineering solutions. However, remember that traffic engineering is complex, and the solutions that are appropriate in one situation may not work in another. In fact, recent research now questions the effectiveness of many common pedestrian safety practices. For example, most pedestrian crossing signals are set so that when the light turns green, both pedestrians and traffic are allowed to go at the same time. However, research shows that in many situations, this timing sequence does not result in fewer accidents. But the research also shows that this situation can be improved by changing the signal sequence so that the timing for the pedestrians is different than the timing for motorists. In some cases, pedestrians are released first, or vice versa, depending on the particular configuration of the intersection. In another variation, pedestrians are only allowed to cross when traffic is stopped in both directions. Deciding what sequence solution will work best in any given situation requires professional evaluation. Research shows that merely painting crosswalks is not effective by itself. A community must go beyond painting lines. For example, coupling crosswalks with pedestrian crossing signs helps to alert motorists, especially on roads with only one travel lane in each direction. At a minimum, all school crossing stations should have these signs, but they're also useful in congested business zones. Further, some studies have concluded that painting crosswalks at intersections with 2 or more travel lanes in each direction can actually increase the risk of pedestrian accidents unless other safety features are installed. The problem is, in these situations, pedestrians are subject to multiple threats. In one common sequence of events, a car in the curb lane stops to let a pedestrian cross, but a car in the next lane does not stop and hits the pedestrian who is emerging from in front of the stopped vehicle. One example of a possible solution is to place the stop line at least 20 feet before the crosswalk. Where multiple threats are an issue, seek the assistance of a professional traffic engineer. For multi-lane roads, serious consideration should be given to the installation of a pedestrian island or refuge. Such a structure would allow walkers to safely stop halfway across the intersection and allow pedestrians the opportunity to check for vehicles coming from the opposite direction before continuing to cross. This type of structure would also give slower pedestrians, such as seniors and disabled citizens, a safe place to wait until the next light cycle if they need additional time. Research also shows that properly engineered mid-block crosswalks are effective, especially for senior citizens. The advantage is that pedestrians at a mid-block crosswalk don't have to deal with the complicated vehicle turning patterns associated with an intersection crosswalk. Traffic calming is when physical measures are taken to reduce traffic speed, which in turn improves safety and livability. In the U.S., traffic calming was practiced as early as the late 1960s and early 70s. Does it work? Absolutely. Properly designed speed tables can reduce accidents by over 40%. Traffic can be slowed by visual treatments that simply appear to narrow the roadway. Engineers call this a roadway diet. Some examples of this are paving the shoulder with a different color material, or painting a line that appears to narrow the traveled portion of the road. Another option is to actually extend the curbs at intersections. Traffic calming can be especially effective if designed into the project right from the beginning. For example, this intersection was planned and designed with a traffic circle. Many communities have also retrofitted traffic circles to help slow traffic. Often, pedestrian accidents occur in parking lots due to poor parking lot design. Because regulations may limit the size of a new building based on the number of parking spaces provided, developers try to squeeze as many parking spaces as possible with little thought given to pedestrian circulation. Planning and zoning boards must be the town's first line of defense against this practice. All parking lots should have clearly marked pedestrian walkways, and consideration should be given to using diagonal parking wherever possible. Transit bus stops are another area with high concentrations of pedestrian accidents. The classic bus-related accident involves a pedestrian who crosses the street in front of the stopped bus and walks into the path of a passing car coming from the rear. Too often, the pedestrian and the motorist fail to see each other until it's too late. The solution is to work with the appropriate authority to engineer safe bus stops that do not impede traffic. For example, this bus stop is located after the crosswalk so that motorists passing the bus from the rear can see pedestrians in the crosswalk. The third E is education, which must start with parents and schools. To help, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has developed and distributes Willie Whistle, an engaging 7-minute educational program for children. Willie teaches children to stop at the curb or at the edge of the walkway, then to look left, then right, then left again before crossing the street, but only when there are no cars coming. Adults should view this video so they can reinforce its simple, life-saving message with the children they supervise. Local police departments often have a community resource officer who conducts educational programs for children. Training programs should also be offered to senior citizens, both as drivers and pedestrians. Another serious problem is the high frequency of accidents in which school crossing guards are the victims. The position of school crossing guard has become one of the most dangerous occupations in local government. Why? Well, many school crossing guards are senior citizens who are reaching the age of high risk due to losses in hearing, eyesight, and general mobility. Also, many of these accidents occur during inclement weather, when visibility for both motorists and crossing guards is restricted. Each crossing station should be periodically inspected by the municipal engineer and the police department to determine what can be done to improve visibility and to slow traffic. It's also critical to consider visibility issues caused by sun glare at different times of the year. Crossing guard candidates should complete the same medical history and physical examination as are required in pre-placement examinations of full-time municipal employees. Particular attention should be given to hearing and eyesight, and the examination should be repeated every 5 years up to age 39, every 2 years up to age 49, and every year starting at the age of 50. Materials are available to help police departments train crossing guards. For example, the video "Street Smart is Street Safe" discusses the unique hazards that crossing guards face in the local communities and what should be done to address them. It's also important to educate the public about pedestrian accidents around schools, libraries, playgrounds, and other facilities frequented by children. To this end, another video titled "School Zone, Danger Zone" speaks directly to school administrators and parents about the problems caused by increased traffic around schools. The final E is enforcement. Consistent enforcement of traffic and pedestrian safety laws significantly reduces accidents. Police departments must take a leadership role, and your community should have a reputation for strict enforcement of traffic infractions, such as speeding, distracted and impaired driving. Stop arms on school buses are now nearly universal and have been highly effective in reducing the number of motorists that fail to stop. However, strict enforcement is essential because children assume motorists will stop. That's why ignoring a stopped school bus must be treated as a very serious traffic offense. Towns that ban overnight on-street parking in residential zones report substantially fewer mid-block pedestrian accidents. A nighttime ban also results in less daytime parking, which reduces the risk that a motorist's vision will be blocked by parked vehicles. To be effective, these ordinances must be enforced. Unfortunately, some communities are unable to prohibit overnight parking on municipal streets because many older residential zones were built without adequate off-street parking. Other approaches like traffic calming and educational programs are even more important where on-street parking is permitted. Now to change gears for a minute. Any discussion of pedestrian safety also warrants a discussion of bicycles. Each year, 550,000 people are injured in bicycle accidents in the United States, including 350,000 children under the age of 15. More children are injured in biking accidents than in any other sports-related activity. When planning pedestrian routes for your community, bicycles should also be considered. Training and public awareness programs should stress the importance of wearing bike helmets for riders of all ages. Research shows that bicycle helmets are 88% effective in preventing brain injuries. What that translates to is this: the universal use of bike helmets would prevent 1 death every day and 1 brain injury every 4 minutes. Yet half of all bicyclists still do not wear helmets on a regular basis. To be effective, your community's safety program must include the 4 E's: evaluation, engineering, education, and enforcement. This is a problem that can be solved, but it requires looking for hazardous areas, installing appropriate engineering controls, providing continuous public education, and committing to highly visible traffic law enforcement. Your community must get a reputation for having zero tolerance for traffic violations that threaten pedestrians and other motorists, including distracted and impaired driving. A successful pedestrian safety program depends on the support of your community's leadership and the active involvement of police, public works, Board of Education, and citizens. Together, we can make this happen, but we need to act, and act now. To protect our pedestrians, we can't just talk the talk. We need to walk the walk.